This happened a couple years ago, sometime in late summer. I want to say around August. My husband, who everyone calls Skier, and I had just packed up our lives in busy, chaotic Los Angeles and moved to a teeny tiny town somewhere in Nevada. I'm not going to name it outright, but I'll say this. The population doesn't even crack 900. We made the move after our son was born, thinking a slower pace, cheaper living, and the fresh air would be perfect for raising a baby. The only thing that bugged me about our new place was how far apart the homes were. Like, our closest neighbor was over a mile away. So if something went wrong, I'd basically be on my own. Skier didn't mind that part though. He's always liked his space and the quiet. Anyway, this one night, it was a warm Friday around 11 p.m. and he was out working a late security shift at a local bank. Our baby, Julius, was just a few weeks old and going through that fun, colicky stage where nothing calms them down. He'd been screaming non-stop, and nothing I did was working. I remembered how car rides usually chilled him out, so I figured a walk might help, even though Skier had the car. We've got 2 dogs, Titus, a big German shepherd who's super loyal, and Dasher, a fluffy little Maltese who thinks she's twice her size. Both of them are insanely protective, especially when it comes to me and the baby. So, even though it was pitch black outside in the middle of nowhere, I felt okay stepping out with them. I got Julius strapped to my chest, clipped the dog's leashes on them, and made sure I had my phone and keys before heading down the trail behind our house. It's a dirt path that snakes through a patch of trees and usually takes about 10 minutes to walk through. I wasn't too worried. Growing up near Topanga Canyon and going camping all the time kind of made me comfortable with nature at night. As expected, a few minutes into the walk, Julius finally quieted down, and the dogs started to relax too. I thought we were in the clear, but then, just as we were nearing the line of fir trees up ahead, both dogs suddenly froze. Their bodies stiffened, and they were staring off into the tall grass to the right of the path. I tried to gently tug them forward, thinking maybe it was a rabbit or something. But Dasher's fur was puffed up, and Titus started growling low in his throat. Now, he's usually the chill one, so hearing him growl made my stomach drop. At that point, I was totally creeped out. I had no clue what could be lurking out there, and with a baby strapped to me and nothing to defend myself, I wasn't about to stick around to find out. I turned us around and started heading back the way we came, just trying to make it home. But, of course, that's when things got worse. We hadn't been walking back for more than 2 minutes when someone or something stepped onto the trail right in front of us. And let me tell you, I've never felt fear like that before. This figure was small, like shorter than me, maybe the height of a kid. But the freakiest part was the mask they were wearing. A creepy pig mask with this crooked, carved-up smile, and what looked like dried something smeared on it. I don't know if it was blood, mud, or paint, but it was awful. We just stood there, staring at each other, totally silent, and I was frozen. Then, out of nowhere, both dogs lunged forward, barking and snapping like they were ready to tear this person apart. I was honestly thankful the leashes held them back. because it was getting intense. What really freaked me out, though, was that the pig mask person didn't even flinch. They just looked down at the dogs like they were watching squirrels or something. Then they finally noticed the baby on my chest and made this strange, high-pitched wailing sound, like a cry almost, and turned around, running off into the trees without another word. As soon as they were gone, I didn't waste a second. I turned and ran. I mean, I had just given birth a few weeks ago. It was dark. I had a baby strapped to my body, and I still managed to sprint home like an Olympic athlete. That 10-minute walk took me maybe 3 minutes flat. I burst into the house, locked every door and window, and sat in the living room with the lights off until Skier got home. To this day, I have no clue who or what that person was. But I will say this, if Titus and Dasha hadn't been with me, I wouldn't have known they were there until it was too late. Those two earned all the treats and belly rubs for months after that. And yeah, I haven't walked outside alone at night since, and I don't plan to anytime soon. Pig mask or not, I'm not taking any chances. This happened when I was 19, during that phase when you feel like nothing in the world can touch you. My cousin had offered me a job helping out with our uncle's glass installation company. You know, the kind that handles those huge glass panes on tall buildings. The job was in Destin, Florida, which meant I had to leave my hometown in Tampa for a bit. Before heading there, I figured I'd swing by Russellville, Alabama, to hang out with some family and then tag along with my cousin down to Destin together. This was my first real solo road trip, and man, was I underprepared. I was driving this faded green Mercury Sable that honestly shouldn't have been doing anything beyond grocery runs. But I didn't care. I had that invincible teenage confidence. Like, what's the worst that could happen? My parents, of course, warned me. They kept pushing me to pack food, water, emergency stuff. Typical parent things. But I brushed it off. I had a cell phone, fast food joints everywhere, and it was just a few hours of driving. I wasn't crossing a desert. So anyway, I hit the road, excited and clueless. What I didn't realize was that Alabama could get really cold. And surprise, my car's heater didn't even work. I didn't even know it was broken, since you know, Florida kid. Still, I figured the chill was helping me stay awake, since I was exhausted from all the stops I made. Eventually, I left the interstate and started navigating these weirdly numbered rural roads that didn't have normal names. The GPS situation back then was sketchy. I was using printed MapQuest directions, which basically meant one wrong turn, and I'd be out in the boonies with no clue how to recover. By this point, I was starving. I kept thinking about how my parents told me to bring snacks, and yeah, I was really starting to regret ignoring them. I didn't want to risk getting lost by driving too far off my route looking for food, so I was praying something would just pop up along the road. Sure enough, I spotted this run-down little country store with a flickering light above the sign that just said, "Grocery" in faded letters. It looked sketchy. Honestly, most of the interior lights were off, but the place didn't look totally closed. I figured I'd try my luck. Maybe they were just one of those old school places that stay open late. I parked and walked up to the front door. As I reached for the handle, I swore I saw someone move inside, like a shadow at the end of one of the aisles. The door was unlocked, which surprised me. I pushed it open and called out, "Hello." What we did, we had to drive through those dark woods with only our low beams and that fog blurring everything, barely able to see the road. But the second we got to a gas station, the fog vanished like it had never been there. We then went back on the road and made it home around 1 a.m. The next day, I told my dad what happened, and he just looked at me and said he was glad we got out when we did, or we might have been murdered. Later, I found out 2 people had actually died there while snorkeling. My boyfriend and I still talk about it sometimes, and we go back and forth between thinking it was just some crazy guy or something worse. Mai and I were on the second night of a short camping trip at a popular campground about 30 minutes from where we live. For context, he's black, and we live in a mostly white, very conservative and often racist area, which becomes important later. The first night, we heard strange noises in the woods around us. The site to our right was taken, but the one to our left was empty. We'd camped in this exact spot the year before, so we were familiar with the area and the kinds of animals that might be lurking. That night, we heard something large moving around near the tent. Probably a deer, we thought. So we shrugged it off and went to sleep. The next day, we spent the day with my family at a battlefield in a nearby town, which was a surprise. Mai had planned because he was going to propose to me. We stayed with them until around 6 o'clock in the evening before heading back to our site, and that's when we knew something was off. Someone had clearly been in our tent. The blankets were tossed around. Clothes were on the floor. My backpack had been messed with, and my underwear was missing. But being naive 19-year-olds, we convinced ourselves it was fine, since nothing major had been taken, and figured the person wouldn't come back. That night, we lit a fire, roasted hot dogs and s'mores, smoked a few cigarettes, and celebrated getting engaged. Around 9:30 p.m., we put out the fire and crawled into the tent to celebrate a little more privately. Soon after, the noises returned. This time, we really listened and could clearly make out footsteps. And then, even more disturbing, a man whispering. A man whispering. We looked at each other in wide-eyed panic and realized there wasn't just one person. There were 2, both whispering, both moving around our tent. Without saying it outright, we knew what we had to do. Mai said he had to use the bathroom, and I nodded. The bathrooms were up the hill, and most people from the lower campsites drove up. As we scrambled to get dressed, he turned on the light and put on his binder. That S, when we heard a voice right outside the tent. "What are you doing?" The way he said it sent ice down my spine, like he was amused, like he had been watching us the whole time. And in that moment, something just snapped. We grabbed what we could, and Mai clutched his keys and his knife, yanked open the tent, pulled me up, and we ran like hell for the car. I could hear the footsteps behind us at first, then veering off to another campsite. At the bathroom, we tried to calm down. and figure out what to do. Do we sleep in the car, drive to town? Finally, we decided to go back and pack up fast. By now, it was midnight. We ripped up everything, tent and all, shoved it in the car, grabbed our folding chairs, and as I hopped in, I quickly ran back to yank off the nameplate from the post, as it had my full name. As we pulled away, headlights sweeping over the trees, I saw them. It was two tall white men stepping out from the woods, right where our tent had been. I recognized them as they'd been circling our campsite in a truck earlier, glaring at us and whispering to each other. One wore camo hunting gear, while the other wore a Confederate flag tank top, and both carried large hunting knives, unsheathed and ready. One of them started walking toward our car, almost in a jog, until the other stopped him. I looked straight at the man in camo, and he smiled slow and cruel, then shook his head like we just cheated death. We didn't go home the normal way. We took back roads, weird turns, anything to avoid being followed, and called my dad on the way to let him know we were coming. When we got there, we told him everything, and he just shrugged it off like we were being paranoid. So, I never told anyone else until now. But I know what I saw, and I know what that night was. Mai was the only non-white person at any of those campsites. It wasn't a coincidence that the two men who wore Confederate flags and had one on their truck were the same ones stalking us, whispering outside our tent and waiting with knives. It still makes me shiver to think how close we were to getting seriously hurt or worse, and how lucky we were that we ran when we did. This is the story of when I found something horrible in the woods. I was 15 years old at the time and was camping out in the middle of nowhere with my family and part of my extended family, like my aunt, uncle, and cousins. These were all people we knew fairly well from previous camping trips. So, it was considered normal to hit it off with them from the start and act like we've known each other forever within the hour. My parents trusted me a lot, and I liked my fun. But I liked getting home in time for dinner equally as much. So, when I was gone most of the day with other people from the camp, they didn't think much of it. The only rule was that I had to be back at the RV to eat dinner, and before 8:30 p.m. in the evening. So, picture a group of 6 teenagers between 15 to 16 years, old out in the middle of the woods, with no adult supervision for the vast majority of the day. Just a recipe for success right there. But this particular day, we found a neat little deer trail we hadn't found in the 2 years we'd been there before. On second thought, it didn't really seem like a deer trail. It snaked through a really thick part of the underbrush, maybe a foot of clear ground. It's a really hard thing to pick out of the brush, unless you either really looking or know where it is. It was promptly explored and marked with a broken branch outside of the entrance. No answer. I called out again, saying something like, "Hey, I saw someone inside." Was hoping to grab a snack real quick. Still no response. The store smelled weird too, like meat that had been sitting out too long. But I was desperate for food, so I stepped farther inside, trying to see if someone would pop out. Then, out of nowhere, this guy appeared from the back. Not the old man I expected. but a guy who looked like he was maybe in his early 30s. He had this big, polite smile plastered on his face. But the weirdest part, his eyes didn't match his smile. He just stared at me without blinking, his face frozen except for that smile. I remember thinking it looked like someone wearing a human mask. It just didn't feel right. He said something like, "Oh, hey, sorry, we were just about to close. What can I get you?" I told him I'd been driving up from Florida and was just looking for some snacks, maybe chips and a soda. He nodded and said they had plenty, then locked the front door behind me. Said it was to stop anyone else from coming in while he was helping me. That made my stomach turn a little, but I didn't want to be rude. He then said, "Follow me," and started walking toward the back of the store, past the shelves, toward those plastic curtains you usually see in warehouses or meat sections. As he pulled one aside, he looked over both shoulders, like he was checking to see if anyone was watching us. At this point, I'm getting serious Nope vibes. I glanced to the side and noticed a rack of chips I hadn't seen before. I told him, "Actually, I'll just grab one of these, if that's cool." He didn't seem happy about that. He tried convincing me the good stuff was in the back, and I should check it out. Meanwhile, I noticed the buzzing flies circling above a meat cooler, and the packages looked like they'd been sitting there for way too long. That was it for me. I faked checking my pockets and said, "Oh man, I think I left my wallet in the car. I'll be right back." I spun around and headed for the front. As soon as I hit the door, I twisted that lock like my life depended on it. When I finally yanked the door open and turned to look back, the guy was gone. I didn't wait to see where he went. I jumped in my car, floored it out of that parking lot, and didn't stop until I was in my cousin's driveway. So, this happened a couple of years ago, and it still sticks with me. It was June 28th. I'll never forget the date. A group of us had gone to the movies like we usually did, and after the show, we wandered around the plaza a bit. The area had a bunch of restaurants and shops, all brightly lit on the front side, where people gathered. But the backside, that place was a completely different story. There was a post office, a bunch of dumpsters, and hardly any lighting. Definitely not somewhere you'd want to hang out after dark. Now, the city I grew up in is kind of a weird mix. You've got your upper middle class families, mostly quiet suburban types, but just a few minutes in any direction, and you're in a whole different world. Country clubs rubbing shoulders with some rougher neighborhoods. It wasn't rare to see older folks out and about, or the occasional sketchy figure just hanging around. You learn to keep your guard up, but sometimes that isn't enough. That night, I was in a short summer dress, nothing out of the ordinary for the weather, and after the movie, I was waiting around alone for my ride. I'd done it 100 times before and never felt unsafe. I passed by this guy who looked clearly strung out, maybe on something. I didn't think much of it and just kept walking, doing slow laps around the plaza. Eventually, I looped back near the post office and saw that same guy again, now standing upright, like he was waiting for someone. I thought he might ask for money or a lighter, and I tried to steer clear, but he stepped right into my path and grabbed my shoulder. I immediately tried to pull away, but then he grabbed my arm tighter. That's when I saw he had a weapon, and in that moment, everything in me just froze. I was completely terrified. I couldn't even find my voice. He told me to walk with him, and with that weapon pointed at me, I didn't feel like I had a choice. He led me toward the backside of the plaza, near those dumpsters, where it was nearly pitch black. I honestly thought that was it for me. I thought I wasn't going to make it out of there. What happened in that alleyway was the most traumatic experience of my life. I won't go into detail, but I was hurt, both physically and emotionally, in a way that changed me forever. When it was over, he just took off into the night like nothing happened, leaving me alone in the dark. My phone started ringing. It was my dad waiting for me in front of the theater. Somehow, I got up and walked back to the car like I was on autopilot. I didn't say a word the whole way home, and my dad probably thought I was just being quiet or moody. That week, I barely left my room. I didn't eat, didn't shower, didn't talk to anyone. I felt broken in a way I didn't know how to explain, so I didn't. I kept it to myself. But here's the part that still gets to me. Months later, I saw the same man in the newspaper. He'd been arrested and sentenced for something even worse. And even though a part of me felt relieved, another part of me just felt robbed. He took something from me that I'll never get back. And justice, even when served, doesn't erase that. It took time, but I eventually found my voice again. I told a few people I trusted. I healed slowly on my own terms, and I've moved forward, not forgetting what happened, but refusing to let it define who I am. Today, I live in one of those small towns where not much ever happens. You know the kind. Quiet streets, lots of older folks, families walking their dogs. And the most drama you'll hear about is someone trying to rob a gas station. And even that's rare because both stations are basically next door to the police department. Growing up, I was always pretty cautious, partly because my mum was super protective, and partly because I've got schizoaffective disorder. That means I deal with hallucinations now and then, which makes it tough sometimes to tell what's real and what's not. But what happened this one night? I know without a doubt it really happened. So, it started around 8 p.m. when my friend and I decided to hang out. We pulled together about $25 and figured we'd hit the grocery store for snacks. But by the time we got close, we realized the place had just closed. No big deal. We turned round and decided to go to the gas station instead. As we were walking near the courthouse, I noticed a guy sitting off to the side, scrolling on his phone, kind of angled toward us. He looked like he was in his 20s, and for a second, we joked that he was probably about to post us on Snapchat or something, because we looked kind of unique. My friend had on punk gear, and I was wearing flowy harem pants and a button-up. We definitely weren't blending in, and it's not uncommon around here for younger people to poke fun like that. We didn't think much of it and looped around the courthouse just to avoid any awkward run-ins, then made our way to the gas station. When we passed back near where he was, I saw he was still sitting there, phone in hand. Again, nothing that screamed danger, just weird vibes. We grabbed some snacks, and while we were leaving and walking past the laundromat nearby, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. There was a guy inside who looked just like the one we saw earlier, and right as we were about to pass the large front window, I caught him pressing his phone flat against the glass pointed right where we were walking. That was it for me. I grabbed my friend's arm and practically dragged us in the other direction. I had no idea why this guy seemed so focused on us, but I was absolutely not sticking around to find out. I power walked us back to the gas station while my friend tried to brush it off like it wasn't that serious. But I wasn't about to take chances, especially when we had nothing on us to protect ourselves. The manager at the station suggested we tell the police, which honestly isn't something either of us felt great about. My friends got a serious fear of cops, and I'm not exactly their biggest fan either. Still, the guy was now just casually sitting outside the laundromat, and I wasn't going to leave my friend alone or just hope for the best. So we went into the station next door. After a short wait, we gave them our names and explained what happened. Turns out, they'd already gotten a separate call about that same laundromat, and they were heading there anyway. When I told them how the guy had literally pressed his phone against the glass, like he was filming or waiting for us to pass by, even the officers agreed it was super off. They thanked us for coming in instead of just ignoring it. We hung out near the station afterward to breathe and calm down, while they went to check things out. Eventually, they told us it was okay to head home, but we still took the long way back just to be cautious. I work at the local grocery store and really hope I never see that guy again. I'm 18 and I live in this tiny village-style town in British Columbia. Like one of those places so small that even some people in the neighboring towns haven't heard of it. My boyfriend lives in the next town over, which is still pretty small and super quiet. Nothing major ever goes down in either place. The biggest scandals are usually some bored teenager keying a car or someone stealing a bike. Anyway, it's about a 25-minute drive between our houses. And one night, not too long ago, I had a drive home that seriously freaked me out. I'd left his place sometime around 1:30 or maybe 2 o'clock in the morning. It was chilly out, even though it was late spring. Pretty typical for this part of Canada. As I was pulling out of his neighborhood onto the main road, I spotted 2 little boys running down the sidewalk. They couldn't have been older than 7 and 5. Both in pajamas, no shoes, and definitely no adults around. At first, I thought maybe they had snuck out for fun or something, because they were climbing on benches and kind of laughing, like they were playing. But then the older one caught me watching them. He suddenly stopped and looked right at me, and I swear, there was something in that look that just made my whole body go cold. Not scared in the usual way, just unsettled. It was like he was warning me to keep driving. Normally, I'd stop and check on kids that young, out alone, that late, but the vibe was all wrong. Like I was the one intruding. So I didn't stick around. I pulled out and headed for the highway. That's when I noticed a car behind me. At first, it seemed normal. I mean, It's a highway. Cars come and go. But after a while, I realized there had been no other cars around until that one showed up, and I hadn't passed any turnoffs or exits. Then, just like that, it vanished. The headlights were there 1 second and gone the next. No swerving, no slowing down, just gone. My first thought was maybe they turned off their lights on purpose, which was weird enough. But given I was already on edge from the kids, it made me extra uneasy. I kept going, and when I hit a lit intersection, I half expected that car to show up behind me, but it never did, not once. That made me even more nervous, and I just wanted to get home at that point. Eventually, I pulled off the highway and onto the road that leads to my little village. Now, this road is narrow, has no streetlights, and is full of bends and curves, with nothing but trees and brush on either side. You can't really see what's coming around the corner until you're right on it. As I rounded one of those corners, my headlights lit up to people walking. One guy and one girl. I didn't recognize them, which stood out right away because, seriously, I know almost everyone who lives here. The guy looked a little older than me, maybe 20, and the girl looked younger, like 16 or so. The guy had a backpack and longer hair, and just the way they were walking down that road at 2:00 a.m. was off. No one walks that road at night. It's not somewhere you end up accidentally. As I drove past them slowly, doing about 30, the guy suddenly started running next to my car. Not like jogging to scare me in a jokey way. He kept pace and stared right into the window, like he meant business. No smirk, no laugh, just this dead, serious look that made my skin crawl. I sped up, but I was getting close to a stop sign, so I had to slow down again. I checked my mirror, and he was still coming. I took the turn into town and didn't even care about the speed limit anymore. I was going at least double it. I didn't see anyone following me after that, but I didn't let myself relax until I pulled into my driveway. Even then, I didn't want to get out of the car. My heart was pounding, and I kept imagining he might pop out from the shadows. But I couldn't just sit there, so I jumped out and ran for the door. Just as I was unlocking it, I heard this loud crash behind me, like metal hitting pavement. I whipped around and saw a garbage can tumbling down the street, even though the wind wasn't strong enough to explain it. That was it. I darted inside, slammed the door shut, and locked it fast. Nothing else happened that night, thankfully. But the whole thing left me feeling totally shaken. I do unknow what was up with those kids, or the car, or the guy running after me. But after that night, I started seeing my quiet little town a bit differently. I grew up in one of those little towns where everybody kind of knows everybody, and people used to leave their doors unlocked without thinking twice. Things just felt safer back then. Or maybe we were all just naive. When I was around 14, I had a few regular babysitting gigs, and one night in December, one of those families asked me to watch their 3 daughters while the mum went out to a Christmas party. This wasn't anything new. She trusted me to stay late, and even told me that if she wasn't back until after 3 a.m., it was fine as long as she booked a cab ahead of time. The girls were sweet, and after some playtime and getting them to bed, I went downstairs like she'd suggested, since the TV upstairs was broken. I remember just flipping through the channels for a couple hours. It was probably around 1:30 in the morning when I grabbed the cordless phone to maybe call my mum or sister to say I'd be home late. That's when I heard the front door upstairs creak open. It caught me off guard, since the mum usually came in pretty quietly, and she would have said something right away if it was her. I figured maybe she just had too much to drink, so I got up and started heading toward the stairs. As I got to the top, I heard someone stumble, so I sped up a bit, thinking she might have tripped. But the second I turned the corner, my heart practically froze. It wasn't her. There were 3 strangers standing in the entryway. A woman who was clearly drunk, slumped halfway inside the door, and 2 men behind her who looked just as confused to see me as I was them. I asked what they were doing, and the woman mumbled something about being there for a party. Now, that obviously didn't make sense, so I asked if they even knew the woman who lived there. When I mentioned her name, they didn't seem to have a clue who I was talking about. One of the guys kind of looked me over in this way that made me feel gross, and then he asked if I was there by myself. I didn't want to answer that. All I could think about were the 3 little girls sleeping upstairs, and there was no way I was letting anything happen to them on my watch. Instead of answering, I told them firmly that there was no party here and that they needed to leave. The drunk woman kept insisting they were at the right house, and that's when the guy who had asked me that question took a step toward me. At that exact moment, we all heard a beep, like a phone button being pressed. I had totally forgotten. I was still holding the cordless phone, but that little sound seemed to rattle him. He must have thought I'd called someone or dialed the police, because suddenly he told the others they were leaving. He grabbed the woman, told his buddy to help, and they all kind of awkwardly stumbled back outside. The second that door shut, I locked it so fast it probably shook the frame. I ran to the front window to watch where they went, thinking maybe they really had the wrong address, but they didn't stop. They just kept walking down the block, like they were going somewhere specific. That's when I knew they hadn't just wandered into the wrong house. They were definitely not supposed to be there. When the mum came home a couple hours later, she was too tipsy to notice much. She was a little surprised the front door was locked, but I just told her it made me feel safer. I didn't tell her what happened, not because I didn't think it was serious, but because I felt kind of stupid for not handling it differently or calling the cops. I still think about how much worse it could have gone, and I'm just grateful it didn't. This is one of those stories that's been passed down in my family for generations. Everyone swears it's true, and honestly, the way it's always been told gives me chills every time. This happened way back in the day. We're talking pre-1950s, in this tiny little town somewhere deep in the Mexican countryside. It was one of those places where families had their own land with chickens, crops, and everything, and every house was spaced out with its own little bit of property. People had outhouses instead of indoor plumbing, and they were set way out from the house, like a good 20 to 40 meters away. So you really had to trek through the dark just to pee. One of my distant relatives, a man in the family, suddenly passed away without any warning. No one had ever seen him sick, not even a cough. So his death came completely out of nowhere and shook everyone pretty bad. The family didn't wait long. They buried him the next day in the backyard, which was normal back then. That same night, my mum's great-aunt, who was just a little girl at the time, woke up needing to use the bathroom. So, like a brave little kid, she walked outside alone toward the outhouse, and she had to pass the fresh grave on the way. As she got closer to it, she started hearing this muffled banging sound, and someone screaming. Not yelling like a fight, but like someone was begging for help. Now, keep in mind, this is a time and place where people grew up hearing legends like La Llorona. So hearing something like that in the dark would already freak anyone out. Naturally, she ran straight back into the house, shaking and crying, and woke up her parents. But they thought she was just spooked by her imagination, so they told her to go back to bed. She tried to sleep, but couldn't shake the feeling, especially because the sounds didn't stop. It was like her brain was trying to convince her it was just a dream, but her gut was screaming otherwise. A couple of hours later, she needed to pee again, but she was still scared out of her mind. So she woke up her older sibling and asked them to go with her. They agreed without question, and they both headed out to the outhouse together. While she was inside, they both heard the same cries, that same awful wailing sound, and neither of them hesitated. They just ran full speed straight back to the house. This time, when they woke up their parents, the parents believed them, mostly because the older sibling confirmed. It wasn't just the little one imagining things. Their dad got dressed, went down the lane to his brother's place, and woke him up. The two of them grabbed shovels and headed straight to the grave they had dug just hours before. They started digging, slowly at first, and then more frantically as the sound seemed to get clearer. When they finally reached the coffin and opened it, they were absolutely horrified by what they saw. The body, which they had laid flat on its back, was now face down, and when they rolled him over, they nearly screamed. His face, neck, and arms were covered in deep scratches, as if he'd been clawing at the inside of the coffin, trying to get out. The wood inside the coffin was shredded with claw marks and dents, and it was obvious that he had been very much alive when they buried him. They think he either had some rare condition where his heart slowed down enough to make it seem like he was dead, or maybe he had been in a coma-like state and then woke up underground. Whatever the cause, he was definitely gone by the time they opened the coffin again. Likely from suffocation or a heart attack from the sheer panic. My family never talks about it casually. It's one of those things that still haunts them.